Lawyers. Whether it's Atticus Finch or Mariska Hargitay, lawyers have been portrayed in pop culture throughout history to varying degrees of accuracy. But the one thing always missing from any TV or movie about lawyers is the part where they stare into their computers, wondering what they've gotten themselves into, how much debt they face, why the partners are why they have to tell Miss Johnson again for the 7th time since the demand letter went out that still nothing has happened in her case. The scene where they think, is it possible to escape this dream career turned nightmare? The quest for change, for growth, for thriving, lawyers hear about these things, but then they stare at the word processor, stacks of legal research, and taste the cold coffee that needs reheating, and they think, things will change. But will they? Do they need to? Is the grass greener at another firm or in another role? That's what we're talking about today on Lawsome. The landscape of the labor of law, recruiting, and how to make meaningful moves in the legal marketplace. Ready? Well, let's roll.
Lawsome, the podcast for law firms. Powered by ConsultWebs.
Welcome back to Lawsome, the only podcast for lawyers that's rubber and your glue. We're here to inform, educate, and entertain the legal community on the latest in legal marketing and law firm development. I am Jake Sanders, second to last man standing on this dodgeball court. And with me, as always, is Paul Spitball Julius, the only player I know who can throw forward and hit the player behind him. Paul.
Dodgeball. Sorry.
Does that mean you're going to throw the ball at me?
I don't know. No one knows. That's the thing, man. I'm like the Greg Maddux of dodgeball.
Wow. And I'm like the Mary Lou Retton of podcasting.
Really?
Why don't we talk about who's on the show and what's on the show today? We'll flip that around on you.
On the show today, we talk about the legal job market and lawyer wages with an article from Above the Law. And then we get technical about how to find the right people or the right position for lawyers with legal recruiter Stephen Lynch. And as always, we have our guest field the toughest interview riddles ever. 5 questions we ask everyone.
Pull up a plate. It's the Hot Takes Buffet.
The article today on the Hot Take Buffet is from AboveTheLaw.com. It's written by Jonathan Wolf, the Wolf. It's entitled, Average Attorney Salary Might Surprise New Lawyers, and Judges' Average Earnings Are Even Lower, in parentheses. Just a little dig there from the Wolf. I'll start with the beginning, and then we'll provide our hot takes. I'll tell you what this is all about. Here's Jonathan starting. I gave a little presentation, just a little one. I gave a little presentation to my local bar association a couple weeks ago. Among other things, I talked about attorney salaries and how they differ regionally. And I sifted through a lot of data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Turns out they gather a lot of helpful information.
Turns out!
All right. You hope so. The Bureau of Labor and Statistics is like, well, how far apart are your nipples? You're like, well, I guess they're not, maybe too far apart. Well, where's the ruler?
Turns out these guys are pretty good with numbers.
Yeah,
really?
I thought it was nipples. I meant numbers. So anyway, he keeps going, but he says, really, it's not all that bad news. The average annual wage for lawyers is a respectable $144,000 a year. Of course, like a lot of averages, this one's inflated by the top end of the market. The median annual wage for lawyers, $120, is substantially lower than their mean annual wage. On the Kravitz scale, which is some benchmark for legal salaries, the top wage was around $182, and the bottom is around $58,000. So anyway, what's your hot take, Paul? Do you have a hot take on this?
Honestly, we talk about, and it says in here about how people aren't quite earning maybe what they should be. Right. Or like you just talked about the difference between wage and salary. Obviously once people get put on salary,
it's
means we need to decap how much we're paying you, but don't work
Right.
less.
Exactly
So,
right. Yeah, exactly right.
and the thing is, I don't think this is exclusive to lawyers. People talk about this wage gap, and I think this article illustrates it to a certain extent, but there's also uh, over looming over this is income consolidation, which, I think a lot of people look at like, something that's thrown around by, crazy leftist socialists or, weird theoretical economists. But,
Mm-hmm.
the reality is when there's less money to go around, people get paid less and they
Mm-hmm.
don't get raises that keep up with the cost of living. So when
Mm.
Jeff Bezos or our buddy Mark frickin' Zuckerberg, you know, is squirreling away billions of dollars, that's billions of dollars that's not in the economy. It's
Mm-hmm.
nice that's in people's stocks, great for wage, for shareholders,
Mm-hmm.
but that money's not there to be spent, and that
Mm.
sucks. So anyway, um, societal rant is now over. I think to
It's
be
a
a
good
little more
rant.
specific. Oh, thanks. I appreciate it. Every once in a while, man. I just got to go off. Being a lawyer isn't the ticket to easy street that it used to be, and it takes longer if you
Mm.
stay in place to build up that income to get to walk up that wage ladder. And one thing I would suggest is that it might be time to start thinking about it like the rest of us, particularly in creative and marketing jobs, where the fastest way to get better positions and higher wages is to change jobs at regular intervals.
Mm-hmm. Well, great, perfect take, and that's the thing. Change jobs at regular intervals. What is the standard number of years I should serve if I'm a lawyer at a law firm or as an associate or doing my solo stuff? I think it's weird because there's such a wide gap and there's such wide expectations as to what a legal career would be.
That's a fun
Um,
concept too.
well, and it's crazy to think that there's $1 million, a couple shows ago, we're talking about people making $1 million running their practices. But right here, the Bureau of Labor and Statistics is saying that, 10% of this market is making $58,000 a year. So there's lawyers out there that are kind of looking at, the reruns of LA Law and, this $1 million big law kind of thing that they've been pitched. And then they're arguing with somebody over, some kind of estate or some divorce or something. And then you just wonder, if you did 7 years of post-secondary education, and you have thousands of dollars of debt, how are you going to make this work?
Oh yeah.
That's Jonathan's whole thing is like, you have to keep telling everyone who enters law school that this is where they're headed. And you're not wrong. But what you said was really interesting is join the rest of us, which I think is like hilarious because lawyers aren't on some weird island. The lawyers that we talk to that we kind of interface with on this show are people who happen to have law degrees. And I think they're struggling with the same problems that every business owner or anybody looking at marketing or branding or advertising or growing their business or doing better or making a little bit more money this year than last year. Everybody's like that. But if you say you got to change, how do you change? How would you know? And that's why on the show today we have, Stephen Lynch from the Lucas Group talking about recruiting, what it means to move, why you need to move, where you could move, what is hot in the market, what's not. So there is potential to move, but he gives some really shocking advice, and I won't give it all away, but he doesn't sound like a typical headhunter. He really has a core on helping you identify what you want from life. And if there's a theme through this whole, podcast, it's been that we talk to people who ask, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to do? What do you want from your career? What do you want from this campaign? What do you want from this initiative? What do you want from this job? What do you want from this hire? What do you want? It seems that we're out of our depth or we're out of our element. And I can't talk about the Kravitz scale or understand, people who make $1 million, doing expertise work, at the legal, clip that they do. But it's not true. You're just like us and you're just as frustrated or maybe facing some problems and you're wondering if you need to move or what moving looks like. It's pretty interesting. But yeah, this whole thing, slapping people over the face, you want to get a legal career, it ain't made in the shade. And,
True. I like that. What do you want to be when you grow up? But there's one thing you get to too is like, what if you become what you want to be when you grow up, but now that you're a grown up and you're there, it's not what you want anymore, or you don't like it, or what you were doing is starting to die. What if these statistics, these numbers, obviously everybody knows you can fudge these things and not, but I think there's some things that you need to question with this stuff. Like say, you specialize in real estate law, and the housing market takes a dive. You don't no more loans to close, right? So, I mean, you may have loved it, and people may have loved you. You may have been excellent. Not one document was ever missigned on your watch. But
great point.
Now it's not there. Like, you can't make a living. It's not that you suck. It's not that you did anything wrong at all. But, I think there's a certain pragmatic maybe and realistic approach to some of this stuff. And I think too, that's, when I say join the rest of us, I don't mean that out of the side of my mouth. I'm just saying this is a reality here that, really, if I see someone who's been in, the director of marketing position for, I don't know, more than 3 years, the first thing I think is, well, they're probably related to someone.
I mean, there's just a lot of churn.
Well, it's not churn. It's that if you're working, how often are you working somewhere? And you can go from making, let's say, what is it, $58,000? Do you think you're going to go from $58,000 to $78,000 in one promotion? Unless you're in sales, that kind of commission is not available to you.
Well, what's
the only way to go is hop.
And what's interesting, so then where do you hop if you have a background in this area of law? There are options. 2019, you could go to Law Clerk, Lawyer Exchange, De Novo, here with the Lucas Group. There's a handful of options right there where you could build up your, you could build up your portfolio of work, take on a little cybersecurity work, take on some new mergers and acquisitions, if you're up there. Or see what estate law, or see what family law, or see what, contract law. You can try out new things, build out your skills, and then maybe feel like, there's a potential for you there. So you're not trapped. Lawyers coming to this, program may feel like, they got to serve a certain amount of time or maybe be miserable. Yeah. Stephen Lynch, in our interview, that's his main thing. You don't have to be miserable. There's a chance. There's opportunities, but it starts with candid counsel and some good questions, and it's all jam packed. So,
but should we go listen to how he eloquently phrases all of that stuff?
Man, let's go. Let's serve it up.
Let's go.
Lawson continues. But first, a word from our sponsor.
Any lawyer looking to grow their business online can generate more leads from their website by hiring ConsultWebs. After working with lawyers exclusively since 1999, we've tested thousands of web designs and marketing strategies, so we know what flips and what flops. For more information, visit www.consultwebs.com today.
And now, a Lawsome interview.
With more than a dozen years of legal recruiting experience, Stephen Lynch is the go-to name law firms and companies speak when they need assistance recruiting attorneys whose experiences and abilities match their requirements, culture, and objectives. Keeping the grass green on both sides, Stephen also helps high-level legal talent at all ages and stages of their careers find ideal positions where they can thrive and achieve. Stephen is a frequent writer and media commentator on legal hiring and recruiting issues. has been featured in many industry trade publications, including HR.com, UpJourney, and Smarter CX. And before all that, he served as the vice president of the American Arbitration Association. Now, tying his yacht to our podcast docks, we are so grateful to have him with us today. Stephen Lynch, welcome to Lawsome.
Thank you for having me.
Give our listeners a summary of what you do at Lucas Group, your current gig, and tell us how you recruit the best legal talent. And then do you have like a checklist or template, or is it different for every lawyer for every position?
Right now, I'm the general manager of the legal division of Lucas Group. We are 50 recruiters dedicated exclusively to recruiting legal talent for law firms and corporations. We're in most of the major cities across the United States. So my role is to manage operations, create strategy, and have responsibility for all 50 of those recruiters. But I also still run a desk, and so I still assist experienced attorneys at all levels, and help them advance their careers. And I partner with law firms and companies to help them with their growth plans and find the best legal talent available. As far as how to find the best legal talent, I think you start by understanding what the law firm or corporation is trying to accomplish with the hire or hires. You know, in the case of a law firm, we're often called to add groups of attorneys and or open offices for them in a new geography. So sometimes it's multiple hires. What problem are they trying to solve? And if you can understand their pain points, you're going to be a lot more effective in recruiting for them. So first of all, figure out what they're trying to accomplish. That'll help you as a recruiter be more effective in being compelling to that hard to find talent. And then if you're an attorney that is seeking a change, you do the same thing. You try to figure out what they're trying to accomplish in their career. What are their long-term career goals? What are their pain points? What are they trying to accomplish professionally and personally? And then give them honest, candid counsel on, steps to take to get them to that ultimate career goal. Sometimes what they're seeking doesn't exist, so you have to be honest and say, look, you just need to stay where you are and try to fix what's broken. Other times, we try to match as many of the characteristics that they're looking for in a new company or firm, because oftentimes we can't match them all, but we try to get them to prioritize what it is they're looking for and then help them that way.
So I'm kind of curious, and you may not be able to divulge this due to confidentiality and stuff. It's kind of a two-part question. But number one, is there like a more popular, like a higher percentage of a certain type of practice area that you find yourself looking to try and fill roles in, like, IP law versus, PI or something like that? And then to kind of piggyback on that, what's the most common reason that firms reach out to you to help them find lawyers or talent?
Well, to answer your first question, it depends on the time. I've been doing this for 15 years, and so practice areas get hot and cold. Right now, it's cybersecurity, data privacy, tech transactions. In Atlanta or in the Southeast, commercial real estate is very commonly asked for by firms and honestly corporations. Generally speaking, all of the transactional areas are in high demand right now as the economy is strong. When and if we have a recession, you'll see litigation, bankruptcy, kind of the what you would expect start to pick up those other practice areas. But right now, really corporate M&A, again, commercial real estate. If it's IP, it's more licensing, more the soft IP, less on patent cross and IP litigation. And that changes. Again, it just kind of depends on how the economy is doing.
Typically, why do people reach out to you to just, for any reason, regardless of the practice area?
I think the first is to replace somebody that they've lost. In the context of cybersecurity, data privacy, every single company is looking for that, 3 to 10 year attorney with that experience. So law firms are just hemorrhaging attorneys that are going in-house. So they're constantly replacing their talent. And then a close second is what we talked about before, is just the high demand, low supply in these particular areas. And I mentioned, a few of those areas, but law firms and companies need good headhunters that can get out there and tell their story and differentiate their platform and be compelling. Because posting an ad is not going to get you the top attorney that you're seeking in those high demand practice areas. The third is just strategic growth. I mentioned before, we're often called on to help law firms add lateral partners and or expand geographically. And that's a constant demand of ours and a reason for contacting us. Corporations, the same thing. As they start to see their outside legal spend increase, we're there to help them hire their first attorney or add, another specialty area in-house, whether that's an employment attorney or an IP attorney. As they grow, they seek to reduce their outside spend on outside counsel, so they'll contact us to help them build their internal legal department as well.
So when you're talking about the supply and demand, you were saying that there's a lot of high demand, low supply, or good help is hard to find. Zooming out, it's estimated that over like 40 million lawsuits are filed every year in the U.S. And there's like 60% of, people who have a legal issue go without help. They go without a lawyer, due to whatever the restrictions are, legal deserts and stuff. And then, according to State Bar Association surveys, one of the top stressors for lawyers is being overworked. So it's like, what do you think is going on here? Like, is that supply and demand happening here? And then is it affecting the way lawyers perceive what the real problem is? And then there's this access to justice thing that's just being thrown and bandied about, here and there. It's just, how do you see the interplay here? And what do you think your function is there?
Well, I think from our perspective, the high-paying jobs that most attorneys go to law school to find, there's a small percentage of those law school graduates that qualify for them. So the big defense firms and the corporations with the general counsel that graduated Harvard Law School, they're looking for those same type of credentials, and not every attorney that comes out of law school has those. So, but they have law school debt. And
yeah, they do.
So they're seeking the highest paying job, and it's just, but not everybody can get those types of positions. So, from a stress standpoint, there's a very small percentage of attorneys that get into big law and are in high demand for a cybersecurity or privacy practice at a law firm paying you, almost $200,000 out of law school. But those are the clients that we service, to be honest. And as far as the work demands of those attorneys, that's part of the cycle of working in a private law firm or in a corporation, just because of the demands of clients, demands. If you're in-house, you have stressors from shareholders and boards and bet the company litigation. If you're in a law firm, you're billing in 6-minute increments. And when you lose somebody in a law firm, the workload just increases.
I have a question about, I read a fascinating piece. I forget the name of the author, but it was Why Law Firms Collapse. And so you're talking about big law. You help place people in these larger corporate big law situations. You're not so much the solos and smalls. Do I have that correct?
That's right. I mean, we do work with small and medium-sized firms, but our bigger clients are the large defense firms.
So what was really interesting was they were talking about, and just as sort of an aside here that maybe goes away from the recruiting thing, but maybe you can talk to the dynamics that you've seen at law firms. The law firm business model for big law is the template for small law and solo, sort of this partner model, and the way the business is run. But when a law firm collapses, there's a certain thing like partner run. There's something that the talent starts leaving, and then the workload becomes too much for the people that are left holding it. And because of the way the business model is structured, you can't spread out your risks. Now it's all falling on one. So can you speak to sort of the way a business model might need to change, or you see the way procurement is changing the business model for lawyers? Because at the Clio conference right now, they're telling lawyers that they need to think of T model and acquisition, and they need to be lean and all of this stuff. I mean, what do you think is a good piece of advice on how that business model can be changed, or how do you see that from your vantage point in Lucas Group?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of talk all the time about changing the model and getting rid of the billable hour.
They talk about it all the time, and yet it just hangs out because you make so much money off of it.
Honestly, I don't see it changing in our lifetime.
There you go.
I do think that law firms have got to start listening to their client demands, because you're seeing corporations take their talent and starting to build bigger teams in-house, and that's taking away business from them. Or they're looking at the small to medium-sized firms for, more cost-effective alternatives. But I don't, they've got to start looking and using flat fees and, working better to meet the client's needs, as opposed to taking their system and the way that they work, the way that they're structured, and shoving it down their throat, which is the billable hour and the highly leveraged model. Right. So there's a lot of talk, and there are firms that are seeking new ways, and a lot of it goes hand in hand with mental health, frankly. Firms are looking at, they're hiring well-being directors, and trying to figure out ways to retain their talent and keep them healthy, because that billable hour is tough. If you're measuring your life in 6-minute increments, everything is being measured. It's hard. It's a hard thing to live by. So they are trying to figure out a new model, but I think it's a big mountain to climb.
And it's a badge of honor. I was on Twitter, and someone said they billed 24 hours over the weekend, and you just have to sort of wonder why is that cool? It's
But
really,
I think,
I don't know.
I think with Steve,
people are wired too. These are highly motivated, highly ambitious human beings that.
Right.
It started in college. And then they took the LSAT, and then they excelled in law school, and then they passed the bar. I mean, you're talking about people that are very motivated. So the badge of honor goes with the profession, and part of it is also how they are wired and how they perform to this day. So they don't have that lower gear where they can say, you know what, I'm going to go home. They're very conscientious, and they're committed, and they're committed to their clients, and they're loyal to their coworkers and the partners or the general counsel that they're working for. They don't all have the skill set of saying no, or scaling back, or taking a little bit more control of their lives so they have a better work balance. They're just not wired that way. So it becomes the employer's responsibility to force it upon them sometimes. Be observant and see people that are burned out, and try to help them find a better balance.
You don't sound like a headhunter. You don't. I mean, there's a nice angle here that's humanistic to your advice, which I think a lot of people appreciate. I know I do. I just wanted to kind of put that out there, Paul. If you had a question.
No, I was just going to say, I think that's amazing. And I was going to say pretty much the same thing, that, you're looking at, we asked you to zoom out a little while ago, and it's like,
you don't have to zoom out because you're already, Stephen, you are already thinking of this. People there's this high churn, high turnover rate, high stress. And there's this awareness here that they're saying, hey, some of these things, because they're interrelated, can kind of be solved that way.
Mm.
But it's fascinating what you talk about this motor. We've had a lot of guests that are ex-lawyers, and they have this entrepreneurial spark, and they grew it into a business, and it's this kind of I can't quit, I'm not going to fail sort of thing. Um, and that's sort of I guess kind of an aside. And I realize not every lawyer is going to, start a business in their spare time, or
Right.
even has that. I mean, there's a lot of risk involved in that too. But one thing that stuck out in your bio, you did say that soft variables can change career paths.
Hmm.
And can you elaborate on that and kind of how that leads in with this? I guess I hear soft variables, and then we were just talking about people with this high motor, high achieving. It doesn't seem like there's anything soft about that. So
Interesting.
can you kind of explain what you're talking about there?
Well, I think you find people that do have those high motors, but ultimately are disenchanted with the practice of law and the profession that they chose. So, they seek to do something else. And so you look at their personality and the other characteristics that they have. If they're charismatic or entrepreneurial minded, they could go into sales, whether it's selling legal software, or they could become a recruiter, or if they're an employment attorney, they can transition as an HR director of a corporation. Every single lawyer, maybe that's overstating it, but so many attorneys want to take that attorney hat off at some point and either be a part of make an impact on a business in another way, or do something completely different. And they just have to kind of look in the mirror and decide what it is that they want to do, and what their strengths lead to. And you know what? Recruiters can help them with that too, to help them understand what's realistic and what's not. But I've seen, general counsels transition into CEOs, or lawyers have gone into teaching. There are alternatives. You just have to kind of figure out what it is that you want to do, what makes your motor run, and
It's
understand from a personality standpoint whether it's realistic that you can transition into that industry or profession.
And
there's a big
okay, go ahead.
something that we've run into several times. It seems people are almost defensive. And again, I think it's going to that the competitive environment and the competitive personality types, and neither one of which I'm disparaging. It works for pro football and stuff, so whatever. But the point is, that these people who said I don't practice law anymore, and it seems like there's kind of like a 5-year sort of make or break point. The people who go and don't do that say, I do have a law degree, but I don't practice. It's like, oh, you failed. Even if you are an a CEO, or you've moved into a successful C-suite job or something like that. Oh, but you're not a lawyer anymore. Yeah, it didn't work out for you, huh?
Interesting.
Like, what?
Yeah.
Like, no, it just isn't. So there's kind of like some self-awareness, I think, that goes into those soft variables there. Maybe am I missing something?
No, and I've hired people that went through law school, Georgetown, sat for the bar, but they knew the entire way that they did not want to practice. And so they've gone into recruiting, they've gone into other professions.
Nice.
As far as it being, people applying shame on people for transitioning out of a career path that they don't like, that's ridiculous. Why should anybody suffer? There are opportunities for people to be happy and be content with their career. If it's not practicing law, there are plenty of ancillary roles and professions that you can have that still service the legal community, such as legal recruiting.
Look at that. Look how that worked out. One little bit of a question just to kind of build out the realism. You said you're giving candid counsel to these lawyers. How do you help them discern what's real and what isn't? I mean, do you have, is there like wayfinding? Is it, you kind of get into spiritualness? Is there a bit of psychology here? Or, I mean, like, just, can you break apart your candid counsel? Because I think it's hard for.
There is psychology.
Yeah.
I mean, first, you really just, you have to listen. You have to understand what's going on at home, what's going on in the office, what's really what they're trying to accomplish long term. And sometimes they just need to vent. And sometimes they're just having a bad day. And sometimes the things that they're looking for really don't exist, and or they can find them at their existing employer. They don't have to leave. So they need to try to fix what's broken where they are before they go through the trouble of interviewing at other firms and transitioning to a new employer, giving resignation, all of those things that are very disruptive. Make sure that you can't fix the things that you don't like at your current firm or corporation before you go and move to what's usually a very similar atmosphere. You're still practicing law. There are going to be small characteristics and cultural differences that you'll find, but my advice is always to try to stay where you are. And then if that's not a possibility, that's when I start to counsel them on other career options, other firms, other corporations. If it's outside of practicing law, I can help them with that too. But you just want to be honest with them and let them know what's realistic and whether or not there's going to be a dramatic change if you go from one AM law firm to another that's in the same building.
Yeah, I mean,
it's just the Keurig flavors might change.
Yeah, exactly.
But like,
that's it.
That's like the coffee grounds. Well, but so you have a lot of this advice, and you're such an amazing, complex headhunter because you'd think you were voraciously, attacking the idea of change, and we all need to be butterflies, you caterpillars. But it's interesting that you have a mix of mindfulness and there is some psychology in there, but it seems like there's a lot still to chew on. If you could only, here it is, limits, Stephen, you need them. What's one piece of advice you could give our listeners that they could do like today that would help them either, hire better at their firm or find that dream job?
Call a good recruiter. Should I plug my number right now?
Yeah, no, do it, man. We're all about promotion.
Well, here's a question. Why should they call a recruiter? Why shouldn't they waste more of their billable hours doing this?
I think, in all seriousness, a good recruiter that you can trust can help you with that honest counsel. That can help you create a career plan. What are you trying to accomplish 3 years from now? What are you trying to accomplish 5 years from now? Are you in the right place to get to that point? And if not, let's transition you to another firm or another corporation that's going to get you one step closer to that goal. And again, you have to be honest. If what they're seeking doesn't really exist, you have to say, look, you can move, you can get away from a horrible boss, you can get away from a hostile environment, you can get away from a firm or company that's asking for too many hours. I can fix some of those things, but there are some things that are part of what you've chosen to do for a living. And you just have to you have to be honest with them. But we can always help them find other options. You don't, like I mentioned before, you don't have to sit and suffer. Even if it's just compensation, if you feel grossly underpaid, we can help, find a firm or company that's going to pay you better. Or if you don't have advancement opportunities, if you're not going to reach partnership, I can find you a firm that will probably promote you to partner. So I guess to answer your question, find somebody that can counsel you on your career, that can help you with your resume, that can share with you what the market is bearing and what's hot and what firms and what companies are looking for, not only from an expertise standpoint, but from a personality standpoint. And then if you're an employer, you need to understand who you are and what types of people succeed in your organization, and make sure that the people that you're hiring have similar standards and ethics and goals, and make sure that your company or firm matches or can provide the career path that the person that you're hiring is hoping to accomplish. you can always find the expertise. It's those soft attributes that you really have to make sure that you're interviewing well, to keep your culture protected, to make sure that you're not hiring somebody that's going to not fit within your organization and create problems.
Stephen, people want to learn more about you on the internet. How can they find you?
Well, you can go to Lucas Group's website, www.lucasgroup.com. You can email me at slynch, SLYNCH, at lucasgroup.com, or call, or shoot me a note over LinkedIn. However you want to reach me, I'm happy to chat with anybody. And we've got recruiters across the country. So if you'd like to meet with somebody face-to-face, we have members of my team in every single city that we can always sit down and have a cup of coffee and either help you figure out how to grow your team or help you find that next best position as a lawyer.
5 questions we ask everyone.
What was the last book you read?
I'm reading the 21 Steps of Leadership for Work. The personal book I've read last was, I guess, The Goldfinch was the last fiction that I read, which was fantastic.
Ooh, nice.
Tasty.
Cool. All right. Number 2. What is your favorite place?
Athens, Georgia.
Number 3. What sites, blogs, newsletters, or podcasts do you regularly check in with?
Law.com, Above the Law. Personally, I listen to, TED Talks. I listen to, The Mindset Mentor. I like a lot.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Dan Harris and 10% Happier in his app.
Cool. Number 4. This is the toughest question of all. If you were stranded on a desert island and could only pick one condiment to take with you, what would it be?
Zaxby's sauce. That's easy.
What?
Is that a condiment?
What is it?
You might not have Zaxby's in Chicago. It's like a dip for your chicken fingers.
Oh,
Delicious.
Nice.
Can you
We'll put a link in the show notes.
Yeah, and spell it for us too, because we're gonna.
Yeah. Okay. Number 5. After a long day or a long week at work, how do you relax and unwind?
I run and I drink cold beer and watch college football.
For show notes, links, and info, go to thelawsomepodcast.com or follow us on Twitter or Facebook. Be sure to leave us a review and rating in iTunes or wherever you find the you listen to. Until next week, stay lawsome.